Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The US-China relationship may have a new pain point, the US dollar. China is betting against it with tens of billions of dollars for the US currency to fall. China is also pulling in resources to challenge Wall Street. This is a significant departure from the time when the two economies depended on each other. So what shape will this new race take and how will it impact the rest of the world? We'll discuss that tonight. Meanwhile, here in India, auto sales continue to fall and they're blaming it on heavy rains and heat waves. We'll explain. In the US, President Joe Biden's son Hunter has pleaded guilty in a tax evasion case. He faces up to 17 years in jail. Will Biden pardon him? In France, President Macron is being accused of stealing the election. His prime ministerial pick has triggered protests. In Russia, President Putin's secret sons have emerged, two of them. We'll tell you what the reports say. Trump wants to set up a sovereign wealth fund for America. What is this fund? Which other countries have it? And how does it work? In Haiti, no end to the gang violence. The Americans are looking to pass the buck to the UN. Why Germany wants to adopt the Rwanda deportation plan that the UK has junked. Why there should be warning labels on food packets like cigarette packets. And what is last chance tourism? What is sleep tourism or dark tourism? We're looking at some bizarre trends tonight. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. In India, Union Minister Amit Shah unveils the BJP's election manifesto in Jammu and Kashmir, says Article 370 is history. Rules out restoring the article, which granted special status to the region. The BJP manifesto makes 25 promises, the first of which is wiping out terrorism. This is Jammu and Kashmir's first assembly election since 2014. Israeli troops leave Jenin in West Bank after a major operation. This ends a deadly 10-day raid in the flashpoint city. The pullout comes amid efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza. Israel's military presence on the border between Gaza and Egypt remains a sticking point. Russia vows to curb American media in a tit-for-tat move. The US has sanctioned Russian state-funded news network RT for election meddling, but Russia's move is unlikely to have a major impact. Moscow launched its Ukraine offensive in 2022. Since then, most American media outlets have downsized or pulled their staff from Russia. At least 17 children killed in a fire at a primary school dormitory in central Kenya. The fire broke out overnight while the children were sleeping. More than 150 children were trapped. The cause of the fire is not yet known, but reports say the dorm was overcrowded and violated safety norms. And Paetongtarn Shinawatra, sworn in as Thailand's new Prime Minister. This ends a month of political turmoil where her predecessor was removed from office. The main opposition party was also dissolved. Shinawatra's 36-member cabinet includes 8 women, which is a record for Thailand. There is a new front in the US-China rivalry, at the center of which is the US dollar. China is betting against the dollar. It wants the American currency to fall. And for this, Chinese banks have been mobilized. They've been working on this mission since last year, apparently. They're making bets against the US dollar, and they have poured more than $100 billion into these bets. That's right. Chinese banks have bet more than $100 billion on the US currency to fall. So if it falls, these Chinese banks will make a profit. Bankers call this move a short. What is a short? Let me explain using an example. Say there's a small Chinese bank. It has 100 yuan. This bank decides to place bets against the US dollar. So with this 100 yuan, it goes to an American bank and strikes a deal. The Chinese bank lends 100 yuan to the American bank. In return, it borrows the same amount of money, but in the US dollars. Now, at the current exchange rate, today's rate, 100 yuan is worth about 14 US dollars. So now the Chinese bank has got 14 US dollars and the American bank has got 100 yuan. But this is a loan from the Chinese bank. So the exchange is done, the two banks shake hands and they agreed to meet 1 year later. In this period, in this 1 year, the value of the dollar can go up or down. If the value falls, then the American bank will have to pay more to the Chinese bank. It will have to pay more than 100 yuan to reclaim its $14. So when the two meet again after 1 year, the Chinese bank will check the exchange rate, it will calculate the difference, and if the dollar has fallen, then the American bank will have to pay more. This, in a nutshell, is shorting. This is how traders short companies in the stock market. In a similar fashion, investors can place bets against currencies too, and banks use a special instrument for this. It's called a foreign exchange swap. Since last year, Chinese banks have been doing a lot of these swap transactions worth more than $100 billion according to one estimate. That's a huge sum. But why are the Chinese doing this? Is this some kind of currency warfare? Well, not exactly. It's more of a defensive strategy. China's central bank is the driving force behind these trades. It is using these short positions to defend the yuan. How does that work? You see, when a bank takes a short position, when it swaps the yuan for the dollar, this trade reduces the yuan circulation. Because when the yuan is swapped for the dollar, there are fewer yuans available for trading. The supply goes down. It makes the yuan scarce. And anything that's scarce, anything that's harder to get, usually costs more. That is what China wanted, to prop up its currency. Because the past few months have been tough for them. The Chinese currency has been losing value. In the month of June, it dropped to a 7-month low against the US dollar. And what triggered this fall? Two things. The US dollar is becoming stronger, and the Chinese economy is becoming weaker. This year, investors have pulled out billions of dollars from the Chinese market. All this has led to the weakening of the yuan. But instead of fixing its economy, China is resorting to the next best option, and that is pushing the US dollar down, and in the process hoping that the yuan recovers. This strategy has its own risks though. If the dollar continues to strengthen, then Chinese banks will take losses. In fact, they've already lost billions. One estimate says that they've lost anywhere between $5 to $16 billion. But Beijing is not giving up. Instead, it's assembling more firepower. It is looking to mount a new challenge. This time, China is targeting Wall Street. It has ordered a merger between two state-backed brokerages, in China. Together, they will create a $230 billion powerhouse. Now, this deal is yet to be approved by shareholders, but it's a mere formality at this point. Broadly, China is revamping its financial sector. Xi Jinping ordered this consolidation himself. Last year, he met Chinese regulators and he spelled out a new game plan. Cultivate top-tier investment banks, give more muscle to China's financial sector, and compete with Wall Street. That's what he wanted. Now, this big merger is being seen as a step towards that. Something like this was hard to imagine a few years ago because of how deeply the Chinese and American economies were intertwined. American companies were investing billions of dollars into China. Chinese companies were going public in the US. Until 2019, more than 150 Chinese companies had listed on major US exchanges. Together, they were worth over $1 trillion. But now a split looks inevitable. The US is building trade barriers against Chinese goods. American companies are being pushed to rebuild their supply chains and reduce their dependence on Chinese factories. At the same time, Xi Jinping has launched his own campaign. He is waging war against a Western-led world order. The divide between China and the US will only deepen from here. What is the biggest threat to India's economy? You've heard of the usual suspects like wars, supply chain issues, and joblessness. But tonight we're talking about a different threat, one that is often underestimated. I'm talking about climate change. It's affecting almost every sector in India. Look at the automobile sales in August. Around 1.9 million units were sold. That's cars, bikes, trucks, all of it. 1.9 million, 19 lakhs sold. That's 7% down compared to the month before. In July, more than 2 million units were sold. What explains this drop? Apparently, the weather. Indian auto dealers have released a report. They blame excess rainfall for the drop in sales. Does their logic check out? Well, there was 16% more downpour in key business regions. Maybe that did affect footfall. But here's the thing. August was not an aberration. In the month of June, car sales fell more than 7%. In May, they fell nearly 9.5%. Those drops were also attributed to the weather. Not rains, but heat waves. Most Indian cities reported scorching temperatures, so once again footfall was low. As a result, unsold stock is piling up. Dealers now have inventory for 70 to 75 days. That's almost 800,000 vehicles, 8 lakh vehicles put together. This stock is worth 77,000 crore rupees. That's more than $9 billion US dollars. Imagine that, $9 billion worth of unsold stock. The hope is India's festive season will ease the pressure. If not, this could put a lot of dealers in trouble. Now, let me show you another report. Heat waves have become the main driver of India's food inflation. This was not always the case. Historically, rain has been the main factor. A good monsoon would keep prices in check. A bad one would increase them. But now heat is playing a bigger role. Look at India's food inflation in June 2024, almost 9.5%. This came right in the middle of the heat wave. So climate change is hurting the Indian economy, and a lot of companies have admitted this, like Hindustan Lever, the biggest consumer goods company in India. They have called weather the single biggest business risk. Same with Dabur. Their beverage business was hit in the last quarter. Why? Because of unseasonal rains in Western India. Another example is IDFC Bank. Their profits fell 11% in the last quarter. Do you know why? One reason was the floods in Tamil Nadu. You see, IDFC gives out collective loans in rural areas. Instead of one person, a group of people take out this loan. And that business is mostly concentrated in Tamil Nadu, but the floods affected these loans. So the impact is quite clear. Climate change is leading to erratic weather events like intense heat waves, heavier rains and frequent flooding. As a result, Indian businesses are suffering. Just consider this year. We had floods in Kerala, we had floods in Telangana, in Andhra Pradesh, in Assam, in parts of Uttar Pradesh, in Gujarat and in Himachal Pradesh. All of this in just 8 months. Such erratic events have an economic toll, whether it's flash floods or heat waves. The Reserve Bank of India released a report last year. They say 4.5% of India's GDP could be at risk by 2030. Why? Because of heat and humidity. If it's too hot, people will find it hard to work. And when they do work, they will not be as productive. The trend could shave 4.5% from India's GDP. The United Nations paints a darker picture. They say climate change could cost India 35% of its GDP by the end of this century. So clearly, the climate toll is steep. The question is there a solution? Well, you already know the obvious ones. Reduce emissions, invest in green energy, move away from fossil fuels. But these are all long-term goals. We also need short-term ones, like flood-proofing our infrastructure, or climate-resistant farming. Now, to be fair, the government is thinking about it. This year's budget made special allocations for flood relief, especially in vulnerable states like Assam, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh and Bihar. Bihar alone got more than 11,000 crore rupees, so money is being invested, but experts say it's happening too slowly. The foundations of India's economy are still evolving. Now is the time to climate-proof them. If not, will be held hostage by erratic weather. In the United States, the big headliner today is Hunter Biden, the son of President Joe Biden. He has pleaded guilty in a tax evasion case. There were 9 charges against him. He's pleaded guilty to all of them. And it's surprising because Hunter Biden was supposed to go on trial this Thursday. At the last minute, he's made a U-turn and pleaded guilty. The question is, why did he do that? Will the president's son now go to jail? And more importantly, can Joe Biden, the president, pardon him? Let's look at Hunter Biden first, the proverbial problem child. He's had his fair share of struggles and scandals. Hunter was 2 years old when his mother and sister died in a car crash. As a teenager, he started drinking and using drugs. Soon he was going in and out of rehab. In 2013, he signed up for the US Navy, but on the very first day he was discharged. That's because he tested positive for cocaine. In 2015, his brother Beau Biden died, and that led to another round of drug abuse. In 2018, he bought a gun, and he did it under the influence of drugs. Meanwhile, his business dealings are also being questioned, especially his foreign business interests, from the time when his father was vice president. Then there was the infamous laptop case. Embarrassing emails and images were revealed. There was incriminating evidence against Hunter Biden and his father, all of it set off a controversy. So Hunter has always been under the scanner, and it's taken a heavy toll on Joe Biden and his career. Which brings us to this particular case. This one is about tax evasion. Hunter Biden was found guilty on 9 counts, 3 felony tax offenses and 6 misdemeanor offenses. He failed to pay taxes worth $1.4 million. This was from 2016 to 2019. And not just that, he also tried to evade taxes by showing personal expenses as business expenses. There's a long list. It includes $43,000 for a luxury hotel, $30,000 for his daughter's law school, $1,700 for a Lamborghini rental, and even $4,000 for a strip club. He declared all of this as business expenses on tax forms. Also, he was found guilty in a separate case related to gun possession. It made him the first criminally convicted son of a sitting US president, so it has been rough. This investigation began in 2018. In July 2023, Hunter Biden got a plea deal. He would admit to a few offenses and he wouldn't be jailed. The Republicans called it a sweetheart deal, but it fell apart. Prosecutors said that they were indicting Hunter, and Republicans seized the opportunity. They opened an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. Not much came out of it, but it was basically a symbolic move to corner the president over his son's criminal record. Which brings us to Hunter Biden's trial. It was supposed to start this Thursday. More than 120 jurors were gathered. It was expected to be a slugfest. So his attorneys made a last-ditch effort. They called for an Alford plea. It's a kind of guilty plea in which the defendant accepts the court's judgment. But there's a catch. They still maintain their innocence. They accept the judgment but maintain innocence. The prosecutors refused this, and that is when Hunter Biden made a U-turn. He pleaded guilty on all 9 counts. His lawyers say it was a unilateral move, and it caught even the prosecutors by surprise. So why did he do it? Why did Hunter Biden do it? Well, we have a statement here. It says, and I quote, "I will not subject my family to more pain, more invasions of privacy and needless embarrassment. For all I have put them through over the years, I can spare them this." So Hunter Biden says he did it for his family, but that means he will have to go to jail. Right now, he faces up to 17 years in prison. The hearing begins on the 16th of December, just a month before his father leaves the White House.
Hunter decided to enter his plea to protect those he loves from unnecessary hurt and cruel humiliation. This plea prevents that kind of show trial that would have not provided all the facts or served any real point in justice. He will now move on with us to the sentencing phase.
Which brings us to the most important question: can Joe Biden pardon him? As US president, of course, he can. And it won't be a first. Sitting presidents have pardoned family members before. However, Joe Biden has ruled it out. He says he will not pardon his son, which is the right thing to say in election season. Also, for the last 4 years, his administration has been under heavy scrutiny with investigations, mudslinging, impeachment attempts, and unflattering headlines. So perhaps he's hoping to be spared all of that in the last few months of his presidency. This story is about one man, French President Emmanuel Macron, a self-proclaimed champion of democracy, although right now he's not championing it, he's butchering it. Macron has picked a new Prime Minister for France. His name is Michel Barnier. He is 73 years old and he's taken over from France's youngest Prime Minister. Now, Barnier has had a long career. He served as Foreign Minister, as Environment Minister, as Agriculture Minister, and as European Union's chief Brexit negotiator. So quite a long career. Perhaps he will make an able Prime Minister. Just one problem, though. His party doesn't have majority in France's parliament. Nor is it the largest party, or the second largest party, or the third largest party. Just look at the breakup. France's parliament has 577 seats. The biggest bloc is the left-wing New Popular Front. They have 193 seats. Second is the Ensemble Alliance, which is Macron's centrist political bloc. They have 166 seats. Third is the National Rally and its allies, the far-right bloc, with 142 seats. And fourth is the Republicans, which is the party of new Prime Minister Michel Barnier. They have just 47 seats. Now, the rule of parliament is quite clear. The leader with majority becomes Prime Minister. In France, the majority mark is 289 seats. No bloc has managed to reach that number, 289. So what does Macron do? Appoint a leader from the fourth largest party. The left is not happy about this. They have staked claim to the Prime Minister's position. They had staked claim, rather, but Macron rejected that claim. And legally he can. As president, Macron can pick anyone he wants for Prime Minister. But this decision could prove to be controversial. The left is organizing protests over the weekend. They have promised to fight this appointment.
The subject is that the president has just decided to officially deny the results of the legislative elections that he himself called for. And so the election has been stolen from the French people. The message has been denied, and now we're finding out about a prime minister that was named with the permission, and maybe on the suggestion, of the National Rally.
Now to the big question, can Barnier form a government? Well, Macron's bloc will obviously support him, and reports say so will the far right. In fact, the far right is the bigger winner here. Look at this report in the French media. It says Macron reached out to Marine Le Pen multiple times. He sought her advice to pick the Prime Minister. Now, Le Pen leads the far-right National Rally. She is a bitter rival of Emmanuel Macron. She challenged him for the presidency in 2017 and then again in 2022. And yet, Emmanuel Macron is leaning on her for help. What does that tell you? He sees the far left as the bigger threat. And he's tearing up the mandate to keep them out, to keep the far left out. And the worst part? This was all avoidable. France had a fully functioning government before this election. The Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, a rising star in Macron's party. But in June, European Union elections were held, and the far right made significant gains. They got twice as many votes as Macron's party. So what did he do? He gambled France's political future. He called for a snap election. Everyone knew what the outcome would be. Either the far right would win or the parliament would be hung. Both scenarios meant a political crisis for France, yet President Macron went ahead with it. His false pride and ego plunged France into this crisis, and the people know it. Most of them blame Macron for the deadlock. Polls show that 51% of French citizens want him to resign. They too feel that the mandate was stolen.
Macron is a sore loser. That's exactly how I feel. He wants to have the upper hand when he's lost it.
It's boring. It's like a huge denial. It proves a lack of respect for the voice of the people. The majority of French people voted for the New Popular Front.
The left parties also agree they're looking at options to impeach the president. Chances are they will not succeed, especially if Macron is wooing the far right. But it does confirm a couple of things. One, the double standard. Macron is clearly misusing the mandate given by the French people. And two, the end of his grand ambitions. Emmanuel Macron's term as president lasts until 2027. He had big things lined up for the European Union. Things like a European army and a European missile defense system. But with this parliament, all of that seems unlikely. Macron will have to dedicate considerable time to domestic politics now. Even routine things like a budget will be a tug of war. It's an anticlimactic ending for a leader who was supposed to be Europe's next big thing. Our next story is about the Russian president. We know a lot about his politics and policies, but not much about his personal life. That's because Putin keeps it very secret. But now a new report has revealed new details about his life. Apparently, Putin has 2 sons. He had them with the Russian gymnast. They live in a mansion away from Moscow and lead a very secluded life, surrounded by nannies, tutors, and security agents. The family goes for holidays together, and no one is allowed to scold the sons, except, of course, Putin himself. His elder son is said to love Disney. We're not sure how Putin feels about that, considering he hates everything Western. Our next report tells you about Putin's secret sons.
In 2015, Ivan was born at the Santana Maternity Clinic. It's located in Switzerland's Lugano. Vladimir Putin was informed right after. Sources say he was so happy, he shouted, "Finally a boy," because Ivan's was the first of the Russian president's 2 secret sons. The second, Vladimir Putin Jr., was born in 2019, this time in Moscow. So why are they secret? Because Putin has never talked about them or even acknowledged their presence. Putin's personal life is a mystery, but a new report has now unraveled it. You see, Putin was married before to this woman, Lyudmila Putina. She used to be a flight attendant on Aeroflot, the Russian carrier. They met at a concert. The 2 got married in 1983. The couple had 2 children, Maria Vorontsova and Katerina Tikhonova. Putin has always been guarded about them. He's never publicly revealed their identities. The Russian president got divorced in 2013, but he was allegedly dating Alina Kabaeva since 2008. She's a former Russian gymnast. She even took part in the Olympics. In 2005, Putin even presented her with an award. Of course, the Kremlin denied the relationship. But a new report has now exposed intimate details. It's with Alina Kabaeva that Putin had 2 sons. They live in a mansion in the Valdai National Park. It's located in northwest of Moscow. The estate is obviously owned by Putin. The security around the mansion and the family is tight. So what does their life look like? Well, the 2 kids have governesses, tutors, and sports coaches. They're surrounded by them. They hardly meet anyone their age, so most of their time is spent alone. And these tutors come at a hefty price. One recent job posting for an English teacher promised a salary of $10,000. This is along with paid accommodation and a 5-day work week. But of course, there are strict rules. Leaving the residence is forbidden. Plus, the candidate must go through medical exams. The boys usually see their parents only at night. Sometimes at big celebrations, they can meet other children. But all of this is very hush-hush. Anyone who wants to visit Valdai must isolate for 2 weeks. The kids even have their own mugs and can only drink water from them. But like any other family, they do take holidays. Their summers are spent on yachts. It's only on safe waters. Their winters are spent in Sochi, skiing in a Black Sea palace that Putin owns. The Valdai estate also has an ice hockey rink, and it's said that Putin plays with his elder son there. So what are the boys like? The report says Ivan is a Disney enthusiast. Well, it must be a shocker for Putin, who hates Western cartoons. But no one can talk to the boys sternly except for the Russian president. Of course, they have a life of opulence and endless privilege, because life as a Putin is anything but ordinary. But for boys growing up secluded and with no friends, maybe ordinary would be a welcome relief.
Donald Trump knows how to capture the imagination of voters. Look at some of his bold and ambitious ideas. The border wall, a space force. As president, he wanted to buy Greenland once. And now Trump has floated a brand new idea. He wants the US government to have its own sovereign wealth fund.
We'll create America's own sovereign wealth fund to invest in great national endeavors for the benefit of all of the American people. Why don't we have a wealth fund? Other countries have wealth funds. We have nothing. We have nothing. We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, or we can name it something different.
He may not have a name for it yet, but what will Trump do with this fund? Well, he promises to put, and I'm quoting, a tremendous amount into it and use it to achieve great things for America. That's how he talks. The US owes over $30 trillion to its creditors, so we don't know where Trump would get this tremendous sum from. Having said that, the idea does have merit. If executed right, it could work. Reports say even India is considering it, starting a sovereign wealth fund of its own. But what are these funds? Why do governments even need them? And how are they different from venture capitalists who already have tremendous funds to deploy and, to be honest, are more nimble and risk-averse than governments? So how are sovereign wealth funds different from VCs? Well, there is a fundamental difference between the two. VCs are like sprinters competing in a 100-meter race. They make ambitious bets, but they also look for quick results. When VCs put money into a startup, they expect outsized returns in a fixed window of time. On the other hand, sovereign wealth funds are more like marathon runners. Their priorities are completely different. These funds, of course, are owned by the government, unlike VCs, which are private. Sovereign wealth funds are basically tools to diversify an economy. They prioritize strategic interests over profits. They focus on building multiple streams of income over decades. Countries with oil money were among the first to start them. Kuwait launched the world's first sovereign wealth fund way back in the 1950s. The idea was quite simple. Oil revenues were filling their coffers. The kingdom had surplus money lying around, so they decided to deploy this money to build revenue streams beyond oil. Today, the Kuwaiti fund has more than $800 billion in assets. And the world over, there are more than 70 sovereign wealth funds, 70. Together, they have more than $6 trillion in assets. 59% of these funds get their money from energy revenues. And what's the world's biggest fund? The Norwegian government's pension fund. It is worth well over $1 trillion. This fund was started in 1967. Again, it was financed by oil revenues. By 2017, it had shares in over 9,000 companies. Norway's fund is among the world's biggest stock market investors today, and that's a lot of financial firepower. Which other areas does the Norwegian fund invest in? Well, more than 70% of its assets are in equities, and they have made a big bet on the tech sector. Norway has holdings in some of the world's biggest tech companies like Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google, Amazon, and chipmaker Nvidia. The Norwegian fund has put money in all of them. We are talking about investments worth more than $100 billion. Norway's fund managers are also betting on climate transition. Consider what the fund's CEO said earlier this year, and I'm quoting, "We think it is part of long-term investing. You really need to care about the impact that companies have on the environment. Otherwise, you're not going to make good long-term investing." So they're keeping an eye on the future. That's what major sovereign wealth funds do. They invest in solving the problems of tomorrow. So investments in the tech sector, climate transition, healthcare, these are all fairly common. Take the example of the Saudi investment fund. It is backing companies like Uber and Nvidia. Qatar's sovereign wealth fund has big investments in healthcare, including vaccine maker CureVac. These funds are putting money in India as well. Last year, they invested over $40 billion into Indian companies. And which sectors did they pick? Healthcare, entertainment, renewables, and space. Again, futuristic and forward-looking industries. So if India, or Donald Trump for that matter, plan to launch a new fund, there are lots of global peers to take inspiration from. The focus should not be on just building a large portfolio of investments. They must have a long-term horizon. These funds will work only if they solve real problems for their people, the problems of today and tomorrow. Our next story is about Haiti. It's a Caribbean nation home to about 12 million people and the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. The country is also overrun by gangs. Violent armed gangs control about 80% of the capital. That's Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti. Gangs took over the capital earlier this year. They solidified their control in April and even refused to let Haiti's then Prime Minister enter the country. His name was Ariel Henry, and he was forced to step down because the gangs had taken total control. But things have improved in Haiti of late. After Henry's ouster, the gangs are slowly being pushed back, thanks in part to a United Nations sanctioned mission, a multinational security support, or MSS, multinational security support operation. It's being led by police officials from Kenya. That's right, Kenya, all the way in East Africa. About 400 Kenyan police officers have been in Haiti since June this year. They have been working with the Haitian police to try and wrest control of the capital from gangs. Meanwhile, as Kenyans put their lives on the line, Haiti's biggest neighbor has been watching from the sidelines. That's the US. It's been keeping an eye on Haiti. The unstable country is a headache for Washington. It's a major source of migrants who try and flee the violence-hit nation. So the US wants Haiti to stabilize. But it has been letting Kenya do the dirty work, providing only encouragement and the equivalent of loose change. This arrangement suits the Americans. They want things to continue this way. That is why the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken paid a visit to Haiti yesterday. Before he arrived, Haiti laid out the red carpet in its own unique way. The government expanded the ongoing state of emergency. The emergency was originally just for the capital, but now it has spread all over the nation. Blinken was in Haiti for just a few hours, and he spoke about the next steps for the country.
The mission itself needs to be renewed, and that's what we're working on right now. But we also want to make sure that we have something that is reliable, that's sustainable, and we'll look at every option to do that. So a peacekeeping operation would be one such option. I think there are others.
The Multinational Security Support, or MSS operation, is about to expire, even though it only took off in June with the arrival of the first Kenyan officers. And they have had an impact. So Washington wants the Kenyans to stay and continue to do the dirty work. The problem is money. Other than the US, no one seems interested in funding this mission. The United Nations asked for $600 million a year to carry out this mission, $600 million in the form of voluntary donations. But it seems that no one else wanted to cough up the dough. And that is why Blinken spoke about an alternative plan, restarting a full-fledged UN peacekeeping mission in Haiti. The UN has tried this before, between 2004 and 2019. And it was a nightmare for the locals. The UN peacekeepers had set up a child sex ring. They were abusing the locals. So the UN mission wrapped up in disgrace, but now the US wants to try it again. Blinken wants a new peacekeeping mission, mostly because then the UN will have to fund it. The UN General Assembly will be convening in a few weeks, and Haiti's fate will be decided by the United Nations Security Council. Like always, the country won't be deciding its future. The decision will be made for it by foreign entities. And this has always been Haiti's history, in one form of colonization or another. Haiti was once a French colony. Paris decided its fate until it broke free and gained its freedom in 1804. But since then, every foreign entity has tried to crush the nation. The French returned in 1825, and they extracted a blood price from the newly freed nation. They demanded millions of dollars from Haiti over the course of decades. Eventually, the US invaded the country and confiscated its gold reserves. Haiti has never recovered. The country has been dictated by one foreign power or another. A new UN mission will be an extension of that troubled history. We do hope that whatever happens, the people of this country finally find some peace soon. Our next story involves the UK, Germany, and the African nation of Rwanda. Some of you might remember Britain's controversial Rwanda scheme. The previous government there, under Rishi Sunak, wanted to deport illegal immigrants. It wanted to send asylum seekers all the way to Rwanda. It was Sunak's flagship plan. He staked his political career on it, and he lost. Sunak was ousted. And in came a new Labour Party government under Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He immediately scrapped the Rwanda plan, calling it a gimmick by his predecessors. But guess who doesn't seem to agree? Germany. Because yesterday, Germany's Federal Migration Commissioner caused an uproar. He suggested that Germany may adopt the Rwanda deportation plan. It seems London's loss is Berlin's gain. Literally, Germany could send migrants to Rwanda and house them in hostels built with British taxpayer money. Our next report has the details.
£220 million, or about $290 million. That's approximately what the UK paid Rwanda over the years. This money went towards setting up infrastructure so that Rwanda could house Britain's illegal immigrants. The work had been going on for years. Here's a closer look at what that money paid for.
We have the ground for entertainment, where we have the mini football ground, basketball combined with volleyball. We have also the smoking area in different corner of the location.
That was Hope Hostel. It's in Rwanda's capital, Kigali. It has been around for years, but it was refurbished a few years ago as part of the infamous, now scrapped, Rwanda deal. The UK had planned to deport asylum seekers. They were going to be sent to Rwanda. The African nation was going to process their asylum requests and decide if they were valid. The people who received asylum would remain in Rwanda. They would not be sent back to Britain. That was the crux of the Rwanda deal. It's why the UK spent so much money. But the entire plan was scrapped earlier this year, when Britain's government changed. The new government believed that the Rwanda scheme would not work, so they decided to cut their losses. But Britain couldn't get back the money that had already been spent. The infrastructure in Rwanda was ready, and it's been sitting idle. It seems Germany has taken note of this, because they seem to be coming up with a Rwanda deal of their own. Germany's Federal Migration Commissioner made a revelation yesterday. He said that migrants coming to Germany via Russia and Belarus could be sent to Rwanda. Germany believes that Russia is sending migrants into Europe as a form of hybrid warfare, so Germany wants to send them elsewhere. And apparently, Rwanda offered to house them in the infrastructure it built using British funds. Members of the previous British government are furious. They believe this vindicates their policy. But the German ambassador to Britain offered a clarification. He said Berlin's plan is different. They don't plan to deport asylum seekers. Instead, their asylum requests will be processed in a third country. Like Rwanda, if the asylum request is approved, the migrants will be allowed to come to Germany. That's a key difference. And Germany also plans to let the United Nations oversee the whole process. The UN's refugee agency, the UNHCR. So there are some differences, but the goal is almost the same. Both the UK and Germany are facing problems due to illegal immigration. Refugees have become a political liability. They have led to widespread public anger in the UK and in Germany. Berlin's solution seems to be sweeping the refugees under the carpet. If they're in Rwanda, they won't be seen, and the German government hopes that out of sight is out of mind. Will this really work? Who knows? But Rwanda can try this out at a minimal cost, because the British already paid to set everything up.
You enter the grocery store with trepidation, because there it is, attack number 1. You catch a whiff of the freshly baked goods. You curb the urge to grab a muffin. But then comes attack number 2, the colors, the fancy packaging, and of course, the obvious tells, sugar, salt, chemical additives. But you don't give in. You are practically a racehorse with blinkers and blinders on. until you're met with attack number 3, the haze of aggressive marketing. Low fat, gluten free, keto friendly, when in fact this food is far from being your friend. Yet again, it is junk food. This is what grocery shopping feels like, a high stakes video game where avoiding junk food is not easy. It is addictive, it looks cute, it is cheap, and it is everywhere. Your chocolates, burgers, chips, fizzy drinks, these are the obvious ones. But even baked goods, protein bars, cereals, and yogurts. Generally speaking, junk food or ultra-processed food includes anything that has gone through industrial processes. It is ready to eat, it is delicious, and it can kill you. Junk food is directly linked to 32 deadly diseases. As I said, grocery shopping is like a high-stakes game. So what are governments doing about it? Are they increasing taxes on ultra-processed foods? Are they regulating junk food ads? Are they banning junk food sponsorships? Well, rarely. Most governments are simply gaslighting us, the consumers. They tell us, do better, stop eating junk food. So now health campaigners are saying enough is enough. In the UK, campaigners have proposed a solution. Warning labels on everyday food items, mandatory, hard-hitting, cigarette-style warning labels. And it does make sense. Product packaging is not always reliable. Yes, there are nutrition labels, but they resemble a dense Excel sheet table. Who has the time, patience, and skill to read them day after day with each product? It's an unrealistic expectation. So yes, warning labels can help. They can reportedly prevent 2 million cases of chronic disease in the UK every year. Of course, the benefits won't be limited to the UK. So far, only 7 countries have warning labels on food products. They look like the stop sign warnings for high amounts of sugar, sodium, fat, and calories. And do they work? Extensive research says yes, they do. They help us understand nutritional quality and change purchasing habits. Chile adopted these labels in 2016. 1.5 years later, consumption of sugary drinks dropped by 25%. Uruguay adopted similar measures in 2018. By 2020, 58% people had made changes in their consumption patterns. There are clear benefits here. But it won't be easy to implement warning labels everywhere because food manufacturers won't take it well. Every time this debate comes up, junk food moguls say the plans will be costly. And these costs will be passed on to the consumers. But research disagrees. Let's take the case of Chile again. After warning labels were introduced, they had negligible effects on wages and profit margins. So the problem is not with food warnings or labels per se, it is with the reaction of food makers. They don't like the idea because it would hurt their sales. You see, junk food moguls and big tobacco are quite similar. Both lobby against regulation, both try to make products addictive. Both can lead to premature death and a number of diseases, yet they both continue to make huge profits. So logically, there is no reason why they should not be treated alike. Like tobacco, junk food also needs warning labels because grocery shopping has become a cruel game where the consumer always ends up getting played. Are you planning a vacation? If yes, our next story is for you. Travel is booming the world over. This year, travel is expected to add $11 trillion to the global GDP, meaning 1 in every $10 spent worldwide will be on travel. And some of this travel is being driven by bizarre trends, mostly thanks to social media. There is last chance tourism, extreme tourism, sleep tourism, even dark tourism. Our next report brings you a primer.
If 2022 was about the return to travel, 2023 was about revenge travel. And 2024, it seems, is about going one step ahead and adding a little bit of crazy to your travel plans. Because this year, travel is being driven by all kinds of bizarre tourism trends. There's last chance tourism. More tourists are visiting sites that are rapidly vanishing due to climate change, like glaciers and ice caves. This has caused tourism to boom in some countries, especially Iceland. 500,000 people visit the country for glacier tours every year. But there are risks. While global warming is making some sites popular, it's also making them unstable. Glaciers are receding, meltwater is increasing, and sites are more prone to collapse. This is causing rockfalls and landslides. Iceland witnessed this last month when an American tourist died after the ice collapsed while he was on a glacier tour. Another tourist was injured. So, with last chance tourism, there is a high risk of accidents. But that's okay with some tourists who are embracing extreme tourism. This is perhaps one of the costliest travel trends, and this niche has grown over time. It includes everything from the deep sea to active volcanoes and even space. People pay fortunes to pursue dangerous dreams. And again, there are risks here. Case in point, the submersible trip to the Titanic wreck with billionaires on board that resulted in a tragedy. There are other low-key trends though for those who want to avoid the risk, like astrotourism, where tourists disappear to scenic locations and starbathe, or sleep tourism, where there's no sightseeing, only nap time. Then there are some happy travel trends like gig tripping. For years, life coaches were treated as big headliners. But today, people are traveling from the world over to witness their favorite music stars. Destination concert business is up by more than 50% globally this year. Call it the Swift effect. But there are some who want the opposite of friendship bands and bopping music. They too have a niche tourism trend. It's called dark tourism, where people visit morbid landmarks, usually defined by tragedy, suffering and disasters. Kind of like visiting Anne Frank's house in the Netherlands or the 9/11 memorial in the US. Though sometimes dark tourism can take a really dark turn. Kerala witnessed this recently during Wayanad's devastating landslides in July this year. As many as 300 people died. But people have been visiting the disaster site out of curiosity. So last month, the police issued a warning against dark tourism, urging tourists to not visit the site because it hinders rescue operations. Clearly, some tourists need a memo on how to do things right. But for others, tourism trends are about trying new things and choosing the road not taken.
It was another disappointing day for the markets, especially here in India. We had 14 days of bull run, so investors made a lot of money last month, but the last 2 days have backfired. Nifty and Sensex closed more than 1% down. Investors lost around 5 lakh crore rupees, that's $60 billion. Now, this loss is notional. You haven't lost the money yet. If you hold on to your shares, the prices may recover. But if you sell now, you will lose money. Maybe that's why the internet is finding all of this funny. Stock market memes have become a genre everywhere. They often target companies, but most times the joke is on the investors. Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Thousands of protesters show solidarity with Palestinians in Yemen. Super Typhoon Yagi slams southern China with strong winds and torrential rain. And India celebrates the festival of Ganesh Chaturthi as Mumbai's Lal Bagh Raja gets a 20 kg gold crown donated by the Ambanis. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1991, the Soviet Union recognized the independence of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania. The Baltic states were among the 15 republics that made up the Union. Today, these states are staunch rivals of Moscow. They're also members of the NATO alliance. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
Berumur